Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
And that's right, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Cramer, joined by my co-host, Daniel Bobo Kurlan. And how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing fine. Sorry about it. If anyone here seeing me looking at me weird while I'm wearing a winter coat inside, the heat, the oil ran out, so we're waiting for at the timing of this, at the time this is being filmed. I am waiting for the oil delivery. So, but for now, it's free. When there's a situation like this and it's as cold as it is, out of a day that's probably one of the coldest days of the year so far in the city, I've had to wear a winter jacket until the heating's back up.
Exactly, buddy. Yeah, you got to bundle up now. It's definitely freezing out, and not to mention that at least Wednesday night at around 8 o'clock as we're recording this, it's a very cold, windy, crappy, rainy night. So definitely bundle up, settle in here as we get ready to start breaking down all the sports stories that have been coming across for the last few days. And you know, where we're going to start off this week, Dan, is let's kick it off with your Giants. I know it seems like it was forever ago that this game was played. Sometimes you get the games on Saturday, and your Giants were on there against the Eagles. Didn't exactly go the way that we wanted. What's your instant reaction? Or I guess, you know, it's a little bit longer than instant, but what's your reaction to the Giants losing 38-7 to the Eagles this Saturday night?
I just don't know what the heck his team just felt dead the whole game. I mean, I just saw some plays that we should have went for it, some that maybe were questionable of us going for it. It's just I felt like we had our defense just looked slow in that game. I feel like is that, and I just feel we have no wide receivers.
Yeah.
And it bit us in the ass in the end. And one of the worst kind of losses and any loss to the Eagles feels horrible. So I feel bad any Giants fans that may have who knows what may have happened is what some Giants fans had to go through after that one.
Yeah, man, no doubt about it. I mean, now the Eagles have won 16 of the last 19 games against the Giants now. 15 of those 18 being or 15 of those 19 being non-playoff games, regular season games. But still, the sting doesn't take away any less. It was a very, very tough loss. You know, the Giants, as we discussed last week, were able to hang in there in week 18, but the difference in talent, I guess you could say, really ended up coming to fruition in this game. You know, we knew that, and we've been saying for weeks, that the Giants were not one of the more talented teams in the playoffs. They were just one of the best coached teams in the NFL and just an extremely tough team to play against. So that talent level might not have been there, but that coaching level and everything else that goes into winning NFL games and being a big time NFL team, the Giants had that in spades, no doubt about it. But like you said, man, unfortunately, the defense really didn't show up. Before you knew it, it was 14-0. And then I think we all kind of saw the writing on the wall once Daniel Jones threw that really bad interception to set up that third touchdown, right?
Yeah, it feels like it, and I just hope during the offseason they build on so far this little success we've had so far. They're gonna have to re-sign, of course, Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. I feel like probably re-sign Daniel Jones and maybe franchise tag Barkley. I feel the direction to go. Also need to address needs at wide receiver. And maybe some quicker defense, I feel like, because that game just felt like just felt like the defense was slow during that game. They didn't have enough quickness.
Yeah, one guy that we called out, or didn't call out, that we were complimenting for most of this season, especially in that playoff game against the Vikings, where I think a lot of these guys might have played their best game of the year. Julian Love was a guy that we have been saying all season how well that guy's played. I'm such a big fan of his. I watched him in Notre Dame, so I know I've been seeing this guy play for the better part of the last decade, really. And man, I got to tell you, the game against the Eagles this Saturday might have been one of the worst games I've ever seen Julian Love play. There were a ton of missed tackles, or just not wrapping guys up, letting guys through, just busted coverages. Really, really disappointing game from a guy who, that, as if you're rooting for the Giants, you came to rely upon. And I think you really hit it on the nail, on the head with the wide receivers too, because that's one thing that's killed the Giants. You see all these great quarterbacks across the league right now, and what's the one thing that the GMs have done? They have wanted to pair these great quarterbacks with at least one really, really top receiver. You can look all over the league for examples. I mean, obviously, Kyler Murray over in Arizona, they got DeAndre Hopkins over there. The Eagles turned around and got Jalen Hurts, and then made the move for who's their top receiver again? I forget his name.
His name, I forget that name too.
Yeah, but you know who I'm talking about. Whatever his name is, the Eagles made that trade and brought him in right now, and that's a trend, and obviously too, Joe Burrow. You get Jamar Chase in the draft. These GMs have been doing that, and it makes a lot of sense. The Giants have to go out and definitely add a top tier wide receiver. And for the love of God, Giant fans, don't say Odell Beckham Jr. You've got a good thing going on. Don't inject that poison into the locker room. Odell Beckham Jr. does not deserve to be anywhere near this Giants team. And just, there are so many guys that the Giants should be looking at. Please don't let it be, don't make him be one of those guys. But you did mention, Dan, franchising Saquon and giving the extension to Daniel Jones. Now, I want to ask you your opinion. I've been hearing a lot of Giants fans talk over the last couple of days about the prospect of signing Daniel Jones and letting Barkley walk and getting the compensation pick for him, because allocating that amount of money for a running back might not be the smartest move in this cap world that we live in the NFL. But I think that you hit the nail on the head again when you said franchise him, because then all that does is it puts it off for a year. Now you don't, he's going to get what? What do these running backs get? They're not making $20 million a year. So if you franchise him, you're going to be paying him maybe around $12.5, $13 million next year. That's totally worth it for Saquon Barkley. You're not overpaying for him. You're paying for, league average. So I really agree with you. Hey, even if, you can't franchise him back-to-back years, so franchise him this year, run your team out with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley leading the charge again, bring in a receiver and see what you got, right? And then, hey, if you have to let Saquon go next year, so be it.
Yeah, exactly. I feel it's what they need to do. Also, I have to say what I said about the red receivers. I mean, we look at every great legendary championship team in history. They all had those quarterback wide receiver pairings. Look at the Joe Montana and Jerry Rice, and
Right.
of course, we got to mention Eli Manning and Plaxico Burress.
No doubt about it, man. I mean, you go down the list and you see all these guys, Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison, and there are plenty of examples of Hall of Famers being teamed together. I mean, just all over the place. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I could even go back to this one right here, Super Bowl III for the Jets. Hey, Joe Willie Namath, Joe Namath and Don Maynard were a great connection back then in the 60s and the 70s. So it's been going on for decades. If you have a great quarterback, you want to get him an elite receiver. So hey, that's the name of the game. And Daniel Jones really proved that he deserves to have this Giants offense on his back next year. So let's just hope that Shane and Daboll agree with us because hey, the Giants are on the right track right now. And when we look at the rest of the playoff field now, Dan, how let's finish the NFC Championship side. So the NFC, obviously we got the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. And then when you look to the other side, it's the 49ers who beat Dallas 19-12. Really tight game, a very interesting game to watch. Very tough loss if you're a Dallas fan. And by the way, our New York Rangers just tied the game against the Toronto Maple Leafs 1-1. So as we keep a look on that early second period. But yeah, so what's your thoughts on that game, Dan, and this upcoming NFC Championship game? Niners and Eagles seems like a pretty good matchup.
I feel this one's going to go for 17-14. Niners.
Oh, and you're picking the Niners. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think that's going to? So obviously, you're thinking this game is going to be a defensive struggle, and that makes a lot of sense. You got two really good defenses, as we saw with the Eagles this past weekend. Obviously, 38-7. Then on the Niners side, same thing. I mean, that's a high-powered Dallas offense that dropped 34 points in the Bucs last week. You hold them to 12 this week. Really great job by the Niners. So defensive struggle. So what do you think that's going to come down to end of the game? The Niners kicker lining up for the game-winning chip shot type thing.
Yep, I feel it's going to come down to that.
Yeah. Well, hey, I don't blame you at all. Looking at the lines and everything at this point right now, it looks like people are expecting the Niners to get the win, but you never know. You never know. If you ask me right now, and hey, we are a long way away from the Super Bowl, which I still can't believe the Super Bowl is on February 13th this year, so the day before Valentine's Day. That's as far into February as we've ever gone. So it's going to be a long 2 weeks, right?
I think to avoid any complications, I mean, people in relation to, I think the NFL should just start the season in the future a week earlier to avoid the Super Bowl happening on Valentine's Day. In a relationship with a girl that's a fan of the same team, then that's a different story.
Very true. Very true. But I do have to say though that the NFL season used to start the last week of August, the first week of September. I mean, now we're not getting started until September 11th, September 12th, right around there. So they really should, and especially the fact that we only play 3 preseason games now, there's no reason that we should be starting the season mid-September. Let's get it started a little bit earlier, right, guys?
Yeah, exactly. Also, I have to say, I guess if you're a fan of a team, of your favorite football team, just don't. I guess you'll be spent. I guess make sure to. I guess hopefully just make sure you don't forget your wife or girlfriend the day after you're celebrating if you're a fan of one of the 2 teams in the Super Bowl.
Exactly, man. Exactly, and that's that's one thing that they really have to keep in mind that this I really think that the longer this drags into February, that I guess you could say that they kind of have the stage to themselves because baseball still hasn't started yet, and hockey is kind of in the point in the season where a lot of people haven't really checked in yet 100%. I know that doesn't really cover me and you, but a lot of people don't kind of take a peek at hockey until the playoffs. Same thing with basketball. So I guess maybe people kind of perceive the NFL has it all to their own right now, but I think it'd be better off to get it done at least a week or 2 earlier. So I'm with you on that, buddy. But so okay, we looked at the NFC side. Niners and Eagles. You think the Niners are going to win. I agree with you. And, when we look at the AFC side, it's a rematch from last year. The Kansas City Chiefs are back in the AFC Championship game for the sixth straight year. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 23. So you really have to just tip your cap to Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes there for their just phenomenal success over the years. Definitely have to give them credit. They've picked up the mantle after the Patriots, and they've continued the streak of being in the AFC Championship game. And for the second straight year, the Cincinnati Bengals in the championship game. Bengals won last year, went to the Super Bowl only to lose. What are your thoughts, Dan? What are you thinking about that now? AFC title game, rematch from last year, two great quarterbacks. How you feeling?
I personally feel that this game's gonna go. That the Chiefs are gonna win this one in what's gonna be a high scoring game.
High scoring, yeah. So, what do you think? Are you thinking in the 30s? Are you thinking in the 40s? What are you thinking?
I think this one's gonna reach in the 30s. I think.
Oh, okay. Okay. I could definitely see that, like maybe like a 35-31 type thing or something like that, maybe.
Yeah. That's the range I'm thinking.
Okay. Okay. I'm with you. I'm definitely with you on that because even though these teams do have pretty decent defenses, these offenses are high octane, man, and I'm with you. I think this is going to be a high scoring game. Um, you know, for some reason, I do disagree with you. I feel like Cincinnati's going to win. I don't know why. Maybe Cincinnati, I feel like they have unfinished business from last year or whatever you want to say. But I feel like Cincinnati is going to win. I feel like I feel like Kansas City is still a very good team, but they're missing a little bit of that dynamic playmaker ability with Tyreek Hill being in Miami. And I feel like even with Tyreek Hill last year, they didn't beat them. And I feel like that Joe Burrow and Cincinnati is going to do it again. And speaking, my friend, of doing it again, the New York Rangers are just taking the lead 2-1 in Toronto. So there we go. There we go. Little happy news right there, right?
Yep. Believe me, happy. I probably believe me if I was in the living room, I'd be picking up Mr. Malunigan late like crazy. Victory. He lifts him up in victory.
Absolutely, buddy. Absolutely. So, halfway through the second period, Rangers 2-1 as a Philip Hedl goal that gave him the lead. That kid line's looking pretty good together, but we'll touch on the Rangers a little bit later. But just to finish up, so you're thinking, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win. So your Super Bowl as we speak right now is the Kansas City Chiefs against the San Francisco 49ers. So a rematch from the Super Bowl, 2 years ago, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. I predict that, and I predict me probably going to the bathroom and maybe grabbing some more food during the halftime show because it's not really an act I'm excited about.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be hanging around to watch. Who is it this year? Rihanna, right?
It's Rihanna. Not to knock anything about not to criticize any Rihanna fans, but it's not an act I'm personally really enthusiastic about seeing. Like,
yeah, I'm with you, and I think they do that on purpose though because they know guys like me and you are going to be watching the game anyway, so they put an act like Rihanna on there to get other people watching, right?
I feel like the last couple of years the NFL is trying to get some teenage girls to watch. I feel like.
Yeah. Like I remember a few years ago, didn't they have Katy Perry, and she had some dancing trees or some crap like that, right?
With some sharks, and I forgot.
Shark, you're right.
Came about. I don't know, with some gimmick or something that the shark shifted or something, or I forgot what it was, but I just ended up liking the left shark guy in the shark costume kind of thing that they just. I one of my relatives wanted to see Katy Perry, and we surprised a relative with tickets. So it's like I had to surprise him by bringing them to the venue. So I had this. So I sat through this concert, and he did something like that with the gimmick shark. I don't know what it was, but I don't know. I was subject to a Katy Perry concert. That's all I need to tell you.
I hear you. Hey, everybody's got to go through that every once in a while.
First was being forced to bring my little sister to a Jonas Brothers concert because my mother didn't feel up to going out that night. That was torture. That was deep hurting. Having to sit through I just remember also that same time when my sister wanted to see Beaver, I begged my mom, I says, please just go with her. Go with her. Don't make any excuses. Hope nothing happened. I don't think I'll this one, all right? I just remember how horrible it was. So I don't think I could survive a Beaver concert. Thank God the sister take my sister to that one. I was able to be at home because I did not want to be subject to that. And I see that one. But I do have to say though, if the halftime Super Bowl maybe an act like Metallica or something, I wouldn't go to the bathroom. I'd be watching.
Oh yeah. If they had someone good, like they had a couple of decent ones a couple of years ago, but some like classic rock guys.
Yeah, like when they had the Stones, I was watching that one. I remember even McCarthy was watching. And I remember the Stones. I was like in my living. I stayed and I watched. But yeah, this Super Bowl halftime show, if I'm at watching at home, I'm probably going to the bathroom. If I'm in the stadium, there's probably gonna be, and wouldn't surprise me if there is a long line in that stadium in Arizona. I forgot what that stadium's called now because I heard they changed the naming rights to it. I remember for a while it was called University of Phoenix. I think it's called State Farm Stadium now.
I think you're right.
But I imagine during halftimes, probably everyone in the stadium that's not really interested in seeing Rihanna is probably going to be waiting online in a bathroom during the halftime show.
No doubt about it. Just like us at home, and maybe online to get some snacks, pigs in a blanket, a beer, something like that. And anything but watching the TV. But hey Dan, before we do move on from football though, because as we round out our Super Bowl talk here or our championship game talk is, you think it's going to be Niners and Chiefs. I think that it's going to be Bengals and Niners. So either way, it's going to be a Super Bowl rematch. You got it from a couple of years ago. I got it from 1988. Taking a real step back when Boomer Esiason was the Bengals quarterback. But have you been hearing the last couple of days, actually? And me and you talked about this weeks ago, too, on the show. My desire to have Aaron Rodgers play quarterback for my New York Jets. And man, I'm telling you right now, it's starting to sound like that's an actual possibility. It seemed like money-wise and draft pick, capital of what it would take to get him here, that it seemed like it was the impossible dream when me and you were just talking about it kind of in a joking way, a few shows back. But now it seems like it's a realistic possibility. People have been breaking it down, and it seems like the Jets would have to give up 2 firsts, but this trade probably wouldn't be happening until June, if it did happen for Aaron Rodgers, which means that the Jets would still have the opportunity to make their draft pick this year. So you could still reinforce the offensive line, or as I saw, Mel Kiper Jr. for some reason had them picking a wide receiver at 13, which I don't really understand because the Jets already have 2 or 3 good wide receivers. But regardless, it would still allow the Jets to pick a top player in this year's draft. And then you'd trade next year's pick and, possibly the pick after that to get Rodgers. I'm telling you, I would do that slam dunk 100% every day of the week. And a lot of people have been talking about the money side of it, where the Jets would be on the hook for $60 million this year, or it would be over the course of it would be 60 million this year and some crazy amount of money next year. But the fact of the matter is, the Jets would only be on the hook of paying 15 million of that this year and 32 million of that the year after. So for Aaron Rodgers, you're essentially getting him for 48 million over 2 years, and all the rest of that money would be paid by Woody Johnson and wouldn't be a cap hit. So that's pretty good for the Jets. I mean, what would you do, Dan, if you were in my shoes, and if you were a Jet fan, would you be rooting for your team to acquire Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, I definitely would. I personally feel that this one will work out. If it happened, will work better for you guys than it did probably the previous time you guys had a legacy quarterback from that played in Green Bay. Sure, you guys know how that probably must have been a bust for you guys. But
yeah, man. I mean, it started off great. The Jets started off that season. If you're not sure what he's referencing, I don't understand what rock you've been living under for the last few years. But in 2008, Hall of Famer Brett Favre was traded from the Packers to the Jets to make room for Aaron Rodgers, taking over his spot as the new quarterback, turning over the franchise to the young gun. And they traded the old gun, Brett Favre, to the Jets. And that ended up working out great for 11 games. For 11 games, that was fantastic. The Jets ended up starting out 8-3 that year. One of their last great wins was a Thursday night win in Tennessee, where they beat the undefeated Titans, who were looking like they were going to be a juggernaut that season. The Jets knocked them off, and then everything kind of fell apart after that. The Jets only won one more game after that. Brett Favre injured his shoulder. It really impacted his play for the rest of that season. And an 8-3 start went down the tubes to a 9-7 finish that missed the playoffs. And yeah, what were you gonna say?
Surprised me if that happened, because if you remember who was on the cover of Madden that year.
Oh, I remember. Brett Favre. And not to mention, it was Brett Favre in a Packers uniform, too, by the way.
I'll tell you a little known fact about that Madden game. What happened was, when they first started printing them out, they didn't have the chance to update it. So they had Brett Favre in a Packers uniform. Later, I guess maybe the last couple of batch of printings of that game, that Madden, there were some copies that were in circulation that had Madden in a Jets uniform, surprisingly.
That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. I hadn't seen those.
Some video game collectors, anyone who, because I know there's a big market for people that collect video games and are unopened and stuff. It's probably got to be. I don't think there was that many printed of him in a Jets uniform, so that might be a rare or worth. I guess it would be worth more to collectors getting a hold of that version of that variant of the Madden cover.
Oh, no doubt about it, man. I would love to get my hands on that. That would be cool. I was always a fan of Brett Favre, and obviously I'm a diehard Jets fan, so I loved when it happened. And it sucked the way it finished, but it was cool seeing him as a Jet for a year.
And if you were trying to get a hold of that cover on open, I guess best of luck to you, because I know you'd probably be shelling out quite a lot for that, if based on what my rough guess about that one, because I've heard that there were some later copies during that time when that was the current Madden game, that there were some printings of the game that had Favre in a Jets uniform. So that those probably have to be more rarer than the ones that came out hot off the production truck.
Yeah, you're right about that, man. All right, and now that we got the football talk out of the way, let's move on and get into some other stuff that we wanted to touch on. As just earlier this week, the results for the Baseball Hall of Fame came down. Dan, have you seen this? That this year in 2023, there will only be one inductee, and his name is Scott Rolen. Scott Rolen, who has, just a tad under 2,100 hits, 316 home runs, just 1,200 RBIs. He does have 8 Gold Gloves, and he is a 7-time All-Star. Look, I have to be honest. For me, I have a high bar when it comes to the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is probably something that I care about a little too much, but my bar for the Hall of Fame is high, and I like Scott Rolen as a player, but he's not a Hall of Famer to me. This is just another guy that's getting in that really shouldn't be in my eyes. What are your thoughts, Dan? What did you think when you heard that Scott Rolen had been elected to the Hall of Fame?
That one surprised me. It's kind of borderline. Of course, on this current ballot, I feel like as much as even though Beltran had that one little bad moment, that one at bat that does bring back horrible memories, the 2006 NLCS, he was a great player, and I feel like is going to get in eventually. I just feel this year they want to, just because of that whole Astros scandal, they want to wait one more. Want to wait one. They want to wait an extra. They're making him wait an extra year. Like they're not going to. Like they were determined not to get him in the first year of eligibility. Like he's going to get in the second or third year eligibility. He's probably going to get in. Also, another thing I got to say about the Veterans Committee. What's the matter with you guys? Get Keith Hernandez in.
Dude, I'm so happy that you brought that up because I did some research, and let's just compare real quick Scott Rolen to Keith Hernandez, all right? Keith Hernandez and Scott Rolen, coincidentally, played the same amount of Major League seasons, 17 Major League seasons. And the difference is that Keith Hernandez had more walks, more hits, more batting titles, more Gold Gloves. He won an MVP, and he also won one more World Series than Scott Rolen, not to mention that he had less strikeouts and a better OPS plus, and I don't even like the OPS plus stat. Look, when you look at those numbers, and I know they play different positions, so don't even start that with me. Third base, first base. Hey, those corner infielders are held in high regard for a reason. You need those guys to be really good. And Keith Hernandez is one of the best of all time, especially defensively at third base. Now, I do want to get Scott Rolen this. I'm sorry, Dan. I just want to say this real quick. They mentioned, well, not they, specifically Curt Schilling, who I also view as a guy that should be in the Hall of Fame, and it's a joke that he's not now. It's mainly political that he's not there. They just don't like Curt Schilling's politics. But
I know
Brooks Robinson, who I said is the best third baseman of all time, said that Scott Rolen is the best third baseman he's ever seen. So I just want to throw that out there because I didn't know that until I saw that Curt Schilling said that today. And I like Scott Rolen a lot, especially his defense. I knew it was good. But if we were going to really sit here, I feel like the best third baseman that I ever saw in my life was Robin Ventura. I would take 99 Robin Ventura over any year of Scott Rolen's career. What do you think about that, Dan?
Yeah, I agree. Ventura that guy was clutch. He was worthy of that Sports Illustrated cover.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That had all the Mets defense on it, the infield defense. You're right.
Still have that Sports Illustrated cover, and I have that one that turned out to be that brings back painful memories because it didn't live up to expectations. You know what I'm talking about? That cover from 2016.
Yeah,
that is guys are on the team anymore.
It's true. All those guys, man. It's crazy.
I'm shocked how that didn't pan out so well.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. But hey, I will give Roland the credit that he was a hell of a third baseman. He stuck around for a long time. But you know what? Hey, the guy played 17 years and he only had 2,000 hits. David Wright played a lot less than that, and David Wright only had about 200 less hits than him. So, is David Wright a Hall of Famer? No. look, let's be honest. I love David Wright. David Wright is one of my favorite players that I've watched over the course of the last 25 years. But David Wright's not a Hall of Famer. They even did a poll, Mets Rewind, which is a great Twitter follow if you're a Mets fan,
Yeah.
did a poll recently, the last couple of days, asking Met fans if they believed that David Wright was a Hall of Famer. 80% of Met fans said David Wright's not a Hall of Famer. And
Yeah.
David Wright's numbers aren't that much off than Scott Rolen, right?
Yeah, I just feel like a lot of Met fans agree with that one that he, and at the same time, I feel those if he wouldn't have had those injuries, may have been a little bit of a different story.
I agree, man. If David Wright didn't have that back problem, there's a chance he's still playing today.
Yeah, there's a chance we're seeing a David Wright potentially either this year or next year. It's the Mets are doing a whole retirement tour season.
Yeah, going for and he who knows if he had stayed healthy, he's the type of hitter that could have been going for 3,000 hits at this point, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I exactly. I would have loved to have seen a David Wright in his prime on this Mets team.
You're right. You're right because hey, David Wright signed that extension before the 2012 season, his 8-year, 140 or so $1 million extension. So realistically, it would have just been running out within the last couple of years. Who knows if they would have given him another extension after that or whatever the deal would have been. He missed time in 13, 14, 15, 16, all of 17, came back for the last game of the year in 18. That's a lot of games missed, man.
Unfortunately, it is. Didn't another one? I think that would have been that may have panned out differently. Reyes is another one I feel was affected by those hamstring injuries caught up to him.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. Reyes obviously had a better time at the end of his career staying healthy, but honestly, like you mentioned, those hamstrings or anything like that really screwed up his career for the first couple of seasons. I mean, he did have a full, thing in 2005, but 2003 and 4, both those injuries were screwed up. Both those seasons were screwed up because of injuries.
And I think 2009, I feel like it happened.
Yeah, you're right. 2009 also, you're right. Yeah.
Oh, like the last couple of years, it affected him.
And then he won that batting title in 2011 and took off. And he really didn't get injured too much during the course of that contract. But I feel like he wasn't playing as 100% Jose Reyes anymore. He was kind of hurt a little bit.
Yeah, like I could tell. Also, I have to say about Wright and Reyes. I do feel like, however, it's a very realistic possibility we're going to see the Mets their numbers retired. I mean,
now let me ask you a question. Do you think Wright and Reyes is not? Because I totally feel like Wright and Reyes should go into the Mets Hall of Fame, no doubt about it. But do you think both their numbers should be retired?
I kind of feel they do because I think they do kind of hold a lot of team records.
Yeah, I could see David Wright, even though for me too. I don't know. I have these high standards with these things. If it was me, even though I love Jerry Koosman, I probably wouldn't have even retired Jerry Koosman's number. But I like that they did it. I also like that they did it for Willie Mays. I would probably do David Wright's number 5. I'd probably retire. But to be honest, if you're asking me right now, I would not retire Jose Reyes' number especially because he left after the 2011 season. I wouldn't feel right about retiring his number. And I even hear Met fans talking about right now, let's say 5-10 years from now, Jacob deGrom, whenever he retires, Met fans have been saying retire Jacob deGrom's number. No way. There's no chance that I would want to retire Jacob deGrom's number. What do you think about that?
Him getting inducted into the Mets Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. But retiring 48 though?
that's a little bit too much, but I feel the Mets Hall of Fame is definite. That is no questions asked about that one.
Oh yeah, I mean the guy, pitched in the World Series. He won 2 Cy Youngs and a Rookie of the Year.
I did something on this team that was like not many people could say they did back-to-back Cy Youngs. So few have done that.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for 2020, he could have won 3 in a row.
Yeah, could have won 3 in a row. Maybe, and then maybe potentially there could have been a third Cy Young with the Mets.
Yeah,
One had he not gotten injured.
yeah, yeah. You're right.
Maybe had he got not injured, maybe the price may have who knows what Steve Cohen would have offered him. I feel at the same time it just felt like the whole time that from what I heard, the Grom pretty much from the get-go, from the beginning, was set on leaving, unfortunately.
Yeah, it seems like that was the case, and I don't know, guys that leave here, and especially in the way that Reyes and DeGrom both left, I can't see retiring their numbers. It makes no sense to me. But I mean, also considering the fact that neither of those guys won a World Series here. The Mets retired Jerry Koosman's number. At least Jerry Koosman won a World Series and pitched the clinching game.
Also, probably an argument, he was probably the second best pitcher on that team.
What, Koosman?
Yeah, Koosman.
No. You're definitely right about that.
Second best pitcher in Mets history. It's legitimate if you look at the top 2 pitchers in Mets history, Seaver and Koosman. They definitely had to be mentioned there. He just had that dominance during that time with the Mets.
No doubt about it, man. No doubt about it. I look back too on his stats, and I see at the end of his career all those years that he spent with Minnesota and then Philadelphia and everything. And I just look at those and I'm like, man, I just wish that the Mets would have kept him around, because he was still in the big leagues in 84 and 85. He could have been there for the turnaround. But unfortunately that wasn't meant to be. Even Seaver came back in 83. By the time they turned it around in 84, he was already back on the Chicago White Sox. So, I guess it wasn't meant to be, having those Mets relics from the past on those 80s teams, but it would have been nice to see. It would have been a nice story to tell.
More about the whole thing, I got to say, Curt Schilling definitely needs to be inducted. That guy was just dominant during the regular season, and the guy was money in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Curt Schilling should be a Hall of Famer. The fact is that, unfortunately, now it's not even up to the writers anymore, because these idiots didn't put him in. They had 10 years to put him in the Hall of Fame. He never gained more than, he had around 70% his last couple of years in the ballot, never got to the 75 threshold that he needed to be pushed over. And it's just a shame, man. Now it's up to the Veterans Committee.
And hopefully they'll do the right thing.
Yeah, but unfortunately they just had that vote about 6 weeks ago, and it was that 16-person committee, and he only got half of the votes. I saw that, and I was just disgusted that they didn't put him in there. But I wanted to ask your opinion. I wanted to go down this list really quick and tell you. So, okay, we know Scott Rolen made the Hall. He got 76% of the vote. But I want to do rapid fire. You just tell me yes or no if you think that the guy I'm saying is a Hall of Famer. Todd Helton.
Definitely a Hall of Famer.
Billy Wagner.
Probably not a Hall of Famer. Close, but no cigar.
I'm with you on that one. And Helton, too. Andrew Jones.
Andrew Jones might be close, but not quite the Hall of Fame.
I agree with you on that, too. Gary Sheffield.
Probably might, I think, is borderline. I'm going to say Hall of Fame, but not by much.
See, I would say he's a Hall of Famer, but because he tested positive for steroids, I don't understand how you could put him in. This year he got 55% of the vote, but if these guys aren't voting for Barry Bonds and Mark McGuire and Roger Clemens and Sammy Sosa, if you're not voting for those guys, how are you voting for Gary Sheffield? He did the same thing.
Yeah, I forgot if he was one of the ones that did that, but
Yeah, well, you know what? Because everybody forgets because he was like Bonds and he used that cream that he put on his bicep, if you remember, that came from San Francisco, and so people forget about it, but that actually came out that he used that Balco stuff.
yep.
Yeah. So, Gary Sheffield. Then obviously, me and you both think the next guy is or should be a Hall of Famer, Carlos Beltran, right?
Yeah, definitely a Hall of Famer.
Now, this is a guy who I cannot believe doesn't get more love on these ballots, man. I don't understand it. Jeff Kent. This is a guy who has more home runs than any second baseman in the history of Major League Baseball. This is his 10th and final year on the writer's ballot, and he only got 46%. A cheater in Gary Sheffield got 55%. This guy, Jeff Kent, only got 46. I don't get it, man. No love for that guy.
Well, unfortunately, this is his last year on the writer's ballot, but I'm hopeful the Veterans Committee gets this guy in because he should, without a doubt, should be in.
He should. And, as a Mets fan, man, we got no love for Jeff Kent because not only did he kill us when he was a Giant, this is a guy that the Mets let go for basically nothing. So
yeah, one of the ones that got away that I guess we didn't see that what this guy, his potential. We bailed out too early on him.
Absolutely.
So many cases that we've made that mistake over the years.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, man.
Just hoping we never make that mistake again.
Let's keep our fingers crossed on that one.
Owens knows the history. He knows how this turned out. I know there's not going to want.
And you know what I can't believe, man? So we just talked about Jeff Kent. So he's off the ballot now. Alex Rodriguez. One of the biggest cheaters in the history of baseball, got 35% of the vote. This guy, I don't understand. You had 139 people on this ballot actually voted for Alex Rodriguez.
I'm shocked that a fraud getting this. I am just shocked.
I mean, he didn't get in, obviously, but still, to have that much support for a guy who openly cheated and admitted to cheating, even after he lied about not cheating, like I don't understand how this guy could get any votes. And another guy too, right after that, Manny Ramirez, 32% of the vote. Crazy.
Yeah. You got to remember, Alex Rodriguez got caught twice, not just once, twice.
Absolutely. You're right. And Manny Ramirez, if you remember, had to retire. He was with the Dodgers and everything, and then he left the Dodgers. But if you remember, his last year in the big leagues, he signed with the Tampa Bay Rays. And he was playing with the Rays, and he was really bad for the first couple of games. And then he got hit with a suspension for steroids, which would have been for a full year or whatever it would have been. It would have been for a long time. And he just retired and never served it. This is a guy who we know used steroids when he was with the Red Sox, and a guy who failed a steroid test with the Tampa Bay Rays, still getting over 33% of the vote. Crazy to me. This is a guy who has more support than Omar Vizquel.
Twice. That's going to get that much votes. Did this twice.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy, man. When you think about it, Omar Vizquel and Andy Pettitte. I like both those guys. I think both those guys are borderline, but I don't think either of those guys are Hall of Famers. I think both those guys have a better case than A-Rod and Manny right now because they didn't cheat. And if you combine them, they still don't have more support on this ballot than either Manny or A-Rod. It's crazy to me.
Yeah. Crazy.
I mean, Jimmy Rollins. Does anybody think that Jimmy Rollins is a Hall of Famer? Jimmy Rollins got 12% of the vote. I can't even believe 12% of the people thought he was a Hall of Famer.
Surprised me. That just surprises me. He got even that much.
It's crazy, man. It's crazy. So, yeah. So I did want to touch on that because it was just crazy to me that the Hall of Fame only let one guy in this year, and it was Scott Rolen, who, like I said, I don't want to disrespect Scott Rolen. I don't want this to be what it became with everybody with Harold Baines, where everybody was crapping on Harold Baines, because guess what, guys? Harold Baines shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame either. He's a nice guy, but he shouldn't be a Hall of Famer. Same thing with Scott Rolen. But man, it's just, it's becoming the Hall of Very Good, and it's just disappointing. I always loved the Hall of Fame. I'll still go. I always said I will always go to the Hall of Fame until the day that either Bonds or Clemens is inducted. The day either one of those guys get in, that's the last time you'll ever see me there.
And believe me, we got to go at some point.
Definitely. I'm definitely down, man.
Yeah.
And so as we're
Name. Great. Please bring back the bus service to Cooperstown. I found out they were offering this when it was too late. What happened was someone pointed it out to me in 2000, I think right before the 2020 season or something like that. Maybe, and I was saying, oh, good, maybe I should do that this summer. Of course, we all know COVID happened. And by the time Cooperstown reopened, Greyhound discontinued that service, despite the fact I trolled them on Twitter about it. They said to me, we're gonna eventually bring back that service, New York, from the NYC to Cooperstown. They never did, and it would have worked out. If that would have been perfect if they had that, because I don't have a car, and at least Cooperstown, I'm sure you've been there, so you know that it's a very small town. Apparently, I'd probably be able to walk to Cooperstown from wherever Airbnb I'm staying at.
True.
If I'm at the right location, I could walk there from there. So, but unfortunately, Greyhound has not brought back that service, and there's really no other way to get to Cooperstown, especially without a car, because it got. And someone said, "Well, they fly there, and the way the logistics work within New York State like that, it's not quite near anything, Cooperstown."
Yeah, there's definitely really nowhere to fly in there. And you could take the bus and the Airbnb too, no doubt about it. Walking around there might be a little bit of a pain in the neck, but you could always take an Uber and it wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so hey, we definitely got to get that on the board, buddy, because the last time I was up in Cooperstown was probably 2019, and yeah, I love it up there. It's one of the best places, man. So we definitely got to do that. Maybe do a Best Seat in the House podcast live from there one time.
Oh, that would be so cool to get to do an episode from maybe at a bar somewhere in Cooperstown.
Absolutely. And actually, while we're talking about little special things, just in case I forget at the end of the episode, which I'm going to try not to, everybody definitely tune in next week, because next week we have confirmed our first guest in a while. We haven't had guests in a long time, but we're going to be bringing back a guest next week. Comedian Mike Bichetti, the great Mike Bichetti. So it's going to be really cool having him on next week. We got him all booked up. So, if you have any questions or anything you want us to ask Mike, feel free to shoot us a tweet or a DM or anything you want to do. And we'll be sure to ask Mike, as we're going to have a lot of fun with him next week. It's going to be great. I'm a big fan. And obviously you guys have known each other for a long time, right?
For a while, he's a great guy. He's actually a Mets fan, so it's pretty cool.
Ah, that's cool. I was wondering who Mike rooted for.
Yeah, and I can't wait to have Bichetti on. He's a great guy in person. Anyone who's known him, I could tell you he's a great guy. If you know him, he's a great guy.
Absolutely, man. I had the pleasure of meeting Mike once before, and very, very nice guy. Could not be more gracious. So we'll be very, very cool having him on next week. And yeah, just to continue on here real quick, as we're running out of time, we want to just get in, as always, a little New York Ranger talk. And hey, we're having a fun time watching the team tonight. Obviously, while we're doing the game, they're up 2-1 in at the end of two periods. So they're heading into the third now, up 2-1. They'll be starting the next couple of minutes at this point. But Dan, we've seen some injuries on this team. We've seen some inconsistent play at times. The Rangers are actually having one of their rookies, Will Cully or Coyle. I don't know how you say his last name yet. Until I hope he makes me remember his last name with his play. But he'd been playing great in the AHL, and now he's coming up, making his debut tonight. He's a Toronto native, making his NHL debut against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So that must be a pretty cool experience for him. What are your thoughts on the Rangers so far, man? I mean, they've been up and down, but it looks like they've been better of late.
I just feel this team looks like they're just going to have a monster second half. There's just something that looks like that. I mean, that game may have been just a blip on. I feel that game against Boston was a blip on the radar. I just feel they might be ready for that team next time they play them because I don't know. There was just something. There was a blip on the. Just felt like it was kind of sluggish. I had to watch some highlights because I was out that night. That game happened, so I had to. And they just looked a bit off that night because I was at FezCon that night.
True.
Which by the way, that was a wonderful tribute. FezCon. It was a wonderful tribute to Fez. I can tell you. It's just be glad.
Let's take a sidebar right here for a second because I did want to talk to you about FezCon, man. That must have been such a great experience, just seeing all the old friends and everything like that, and all the Fezzy props.
But it was. I just have to thank everyone who put that together because that was a wonderful tribute to Fez, including some members of Fez's family. Like I actually got to personally thank Fez's sister Tammy for helping put this together and getting to express how all those wonderful laughs and memories that her brother Fez Wadley, of course, brought us, and that was just a wonderful tribute. And I have to say, also, it just hit me by surprise that Fez's ashes were there, as you saw in that photo I showed you. That just I did not expect that I'd be, in a way, just paying my sort of. I mean, I thought it was. I knew going to celebrating the life of Fez, but that one really didn't expect me that I would almost be paying my respects to Fez like that. Like I'd be coming face to face with his remains. Like
yeah, it's almost like you were expecting to go to a memorial, and it was almost like you ended up being at the wake unexpectedly, right?
Yeah, that's the best way to describe what my reaction to coming seeing the urn with Fez's remains. Best way to describe it.
Yeah, I was very, very surprised when I saw that, and I was very moved too because Fez for 20 years, man, was a big part of my life, and as I'm sure yours, you knew the man personally, so obviously it definitely was.
Yeah, it does. Wasn't just seeing those, and it was neat seeing all those outfits. Like I remember those. Like you would see some of these outfits. You say, "Oh, I remember this one. You remember this bit, and you remember, oh yeah, that's it. I remember him doing the Nature Boy bit." Crazy thing though. Crazy thing was that the night before FezCon, I had some crazy dream that I'm in the living room at what looked like some Super Bowl party, and for some reason Fez just showed up like some sort of goes like the smoke popped up, like he just was doing the Nature Boy bit, like he just decided to just pop up out of nowhere. Those I had this dream I had. This was some weird dream that I had, or maybe it was a sign or something that I was going to FezCon because that time I wasn't sure if I was going to get a ticket or not to FezCon, but I did. But seeing that was a weird dream at a party, but it just feels like that dream though felt like something that the ghost of Fez would do. I feel like.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you, man. I totally agree with you. That seems like, Fezzy just kind of just like you said, the ghost of Fez just kind of touched you a little bit, put you on his mind, or put him on your mind, and who knows, maybe that was one of the things that helped you get the tickets in the long run, right?
Yeah, because I signed up for a FezCon ticket, and at first said, "Oh, it was sold out, but if there's any made available, we'll inform you." All of a sudden, like a couple days before FezCon, I noticed the email: the ticket's been made available. And bear in mind, this is a free ticket, right? Bear in
Mm.
mind, so I wasn't literally the email and stuff was the only way to get this ticket. This wasn't like buying tickets to a sold out Mets game that you could go on StubHub and be lucky to find at a good price. This is just you had to be lucky, get this through email and you signed up for a ticket that there was a ticket available, and by luck it just worked out. I
Hey,
got to be I got to be at FezCon, and it was just a wonderful tribute. And there was even some nostalgic, even with the music playing in the background, because you heard little things in the background like the opening song from from the Ron Fez show. The various opening songs like "Remember Greatest Show" by ICP, and
oh yeah, and
and then
and North American, right?
yeah, and you also. And then I think toward like the and then of course you even heard the audio of it. It makes you Fez.
Oh, they played that too. Oh, that's the best, man.
Also, I have to say that of course the one thing I would have liked to have seen. I thought it would have been cool if they had a live band playing a cover of that song. That would have been cool if they did that. Like had just brought in a band playing a cover of that song. That would have been cool.
That would have been awesome. That is true. That is true.
Also, I of course also when the event ended, they did play "Satellite of Love" by Lou Reed,
Of course, they had to. The ending. I'll
and
never forget listening to the last episode of Ron and Fez, hearing Fezzy sing that, crying.
and as I walked out, I kind of said like, "Duh, that's the end of the show."
And that's the end of my show. Dunk.
Kind of playing in my head a little bit when I'm walking out when I walked out of the Hard Rock.
Do you know what that's from, by the way?
I don't remember where that's from. That sounds familiar from someplace, but it's one of those things I've heard somewhere, but I can't quite.
It's from homestarrunner.com. Does that sound familiar at all?
It's a website.
Yeah, and that's the end of my show. Dunk. That's what they used to grab that from. That was from a character off this website called homestarrunner.com.
I guess
So,
that's like a really really deep. That's a real deep one, but I've heard people mention that one before. So
yeah,
I
that's typical Ron and Fez. You always got to go for the deep cuts.
yeah, there is a lot of deep cuts that I got, but that one is really a real deep one.
Oh man. Well, you're right about that, man. I'm glad you had a good time at FezCon. That's fucking awesome, man.
If I would have known that I was going to get a ticket early enough, I didn't have enough time to buy one on Amazon. I would have bought a Fez off of Amazon and worn that if I would have enough time that I was going to get to be there.
That's a good idea, man. I didn't even think of that. Was anybody there wearing fezzes?
Oh, I got to say another thing about FezCon. Plenty of fans really got into the spirit of the FezCon. You saw plenty of fans wearing the shiny disco-y ball type outfit,
Mm-hmm.
as well-known outfits that Fez has worn, a over-the-top disco ball outfit. And there were fans wearing Fezes, of course.
Of course. Very cool, very cool, man. But actually, unfortunately, we're running low on time here. So Dan, before we get out of here, you want to give yourself a couple of plugs?
Sure, you can follow me on Bobo103NYC on Twitter, Bobo718DK on Instagram, Daniel Kurlan on YouTube. And of course, I gotta say this one's probably a little deep cut for you, but a couple of people watching this will get this little reference as we end the show. Push the button, Frank.
There we go. All right. And hey, for me, if you want to follow me on Twitter, check me out at my last name, Cramer NY. Don't forget to check the show out on Twitter at bsith_podcast, and also on Instagram at Best Seat in the House Podcast. Also, like we mentioned last week, anywhere you want, you can get this podcast audio now. Actually, it's audio and video on Spotify starting tomorrow. Then we have Stitcher. We have iHeartRadio. Anchor.fm. We got anywhere you get your podcasts. Obviously, Apple. Obviously, Google. Anywhere you get them, our podcast is going to be available. So please subscribe, like, leave a comment, anything you want. Give us a 5-star review if you think we've earned it. And if not, well, thanks for listening anyway. And what's that, Dan?
And if it was possible, we'd have the show you implanted into your brain if it was possible.
Exactly. Like, the Men in Black thing. All you got to do is look at it, and it'll be right in your freaking brain. So
be able to broadcast into your brain.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks again for tuning in and catching the show this week. For Rob Cramer and Daniel Bobo Kurlan, this is the Best Seat in the House podcast, and we'll catch you next week with Mike Bichetti.